Hi everyone. I think I know a lot of you. I'm Ryan Jespersen with Wowza. So been at Wowza for going on 4 years, and known Rob and many of the customers here for a long time as well. So how many of you are familiar with Wowza? I'm hoping a few. Good. So Rob Thomas and Streaming Limited, and of course the MEDIAL software has been built on Wowza now for many years, and really great partner of ours. And they really, Wowza is really a technology built by developers for developers, so they can build turnkey solutions like MEDIAL for end users. And it's a perfect fit. And then in collaboration with JW Player, who's one of our best technology partners as well, it just kind of shows how good the integration is with a technology like MEDIAL, using Wowza with JW Player, both on the video on demand side and on the live streaming side, to really take the most out of our software and put it in the hands of you guys as admins, and then also your end users within the EDU space. So I want to talk a little bit about where we are with our technology, Wowza Streaming Engine, which is the core of the streaming software used inside of MEDIAL, but then also talk a little bit about our cloud solution, which Rob and his team are utilizing to really scale beyond the local network to the cloud, the CDN. Talk about some of the technology integrations that we're doing, from immersive technologies like VR and 360 streaming, ultra-low latency streaming, mobile journalism type streaming, all these things that Wowza is playing in and developing, and then our customers at MEDIAL are really using to put in the hands of you guys. So kind of a technology update, what's really brand new inside the product as of this year and then coming up into 2018. So what we recently launched is Wowza Clearcaster. So this is a dedicated encoder for Facebook Live. So we were one of the first to integrate with the Facebook Live API when they launched it at the FA conference last year in 2016. And we continually, our CTO Charlie worked very closely with our engineering team to help refine their Live API. And kind of that conversation kept going, and they really asked us to design a dedicated hardware encoder just for Facebook Live. So, it's kind of scary, but Wowza's in the hardware space. And we took a page out of Microsoft and others who've got in the space and had really good results, right? So software companies getting into hardware always works out. So that's why we haven't learned from history and developed this device. But really, we're very proud of it. It's a great way. We're seeing that more and more people are streaming directly to it, and I'll mention a little bit about it now. But the idea is it's a dedicated rack-mounted encoder that allows you to take all of the worry out of streaming directly to Facebook Live. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to support Facebook Live directly inside the Wowza software. This actually helps with that, is we work directly with them to help develop their API to get even more and more features out of Facebook Live, and then we build that into the Wowza software as well. So things like Facebook Live 360 streaming directly from Wowza is going to be in the product, or in Wowza Streaming Engine. It already is in Wowza Streaming Cloud, in our cloud product. And we're doing a lot of different Facebook performance enhancements inside of the Wowza Streaming Engine software that MEDIAL can take advantage of inside the software to restream to those platforms. And for many of you, you might not already have a social media strategy when it comes to live streaming. But the reality is, for things like recruitment, for things like virtual tours for campuses, live events. I know UCL does a lot of their lunchtime lectures where they do public-facing events. Sometimes you want to proliferate that content, not just to your own platform, but to social media platforms, to really build a global audience and a scalable audience, and bring your universities to the forefront when it comes to research or lectures or famous people. All these different things that MEDIAL can be used and Wowza can be used to really get to those different audiences. So we do a lot with YouTube Live, with Facebook Live, with Periscope, and we continue to develop these technologies to integrate with these social media platforms. One of the other things that we're really working on is SRT. Is anyone familiar with SRT? So SRT, I'll talk a little bit about it. It's called Secure Reliable Transport. It's a protocol that was developed by Haivision. And the idea is it's trying to reduce latency in the streaming workflow, but also add more reliability across dirty network connections, whether it be the public internet or even parts of your network that don't have reliable access through Wi-Fi or other methods. So I'll talk a little bit about SRT as well, both from an ingest point, from a contribution side from an encoder, as well as also delivery and distribution of streaming throughout a local network or even a WAN or the public internet. And then there's a lot of little bits of technology updates that I have. We're going to talk a little bit about GoCoder, which the live application that we just saw, Rob demo, what we're doing to actually create full playback experiences, not just capture, but playback across a mobile device workflow as well. So talked a little bit about the Wowza Clearcaster. This is this joint product that we have with Facebook Live. And really what we're doing is we're working hand in hand with our engineers to add a new workflow to Facebook Live. The idea that with this device, the biggest complaint people have is frame accurate start times. They never know when they're really live. MEDIAL has solved that within their product so that people know they're live with their great pre-roll, post-roll, live, preview mode, all that. But with Facebook Live, people still have this issue. Even with YouTube Live, if you currently restream using Wowza to YouTube Live, you never know quite when you're live. And this product is aimed to solve that. There's also a lot of very intelligent stream health monitoring that's happening. So one of the biggest problems is the upload bandwidth, sometimes from a live event. So this device intelligently changes the encode bitrate depending on how much bandwidth you have available from your live event. So whether you're using an actual truck or a part of your network that maybe doesn't have great internet, this device can intelligently switch when plugging into the Facebook Live platform, which will reduce the potential for that cutting off or stopping midstream or some of these issues that you get with live streaming. So real quick, I'm just going to show a very quick video here of the actual device itself, and I'll talk through it. It's kind of a marketing video, but the idea is, Facebook Live is doing a ton of investment, like a huge amount of investment in live. They're buying content rights for things like trying to buy La Liga rights, for the Premier League football rights, cricket rights in India. And that's great for all these live sporting events, but what does it mean for the educational side of things? It's a way for you to engage with your users, with your not just users from a educational perspective, also the professors, lecturers, all these different people who are on Facebook. You want to be able to push directly to your social media page to reach these people and really get your content out there. So this really, the thing that we find with social media as well is the amount of engagement that happens. So by really truly engaging with your content, people are able to interact, people are able to stay on for longer than maybe a video on demand file because there's live interaction happening with it. We're also building in things like moderation. So I know that's a big issue for a lot of educational institutions is making sure there's not content that gets out there that's offensive in any kind, like what Rob just brought up on the BBC page. You can do things to actually really do moderation, polling, and engage audiences. And that's really, we saw from the show of hands how many people are actually doing live streaming, but you'll see, I think we're seeing more and more people are finding ways to really engage that. Think of virtual campus tour. You could pull up a mobile device and do a virtual campus tour at the same time, maybe even in 360, so that someone who is remote, who doesn't have the means to come and visit on site from all across the world, you want to attract those people to your university and your institution. There are ways that you can do this with MEDIAL Live and with 360 technology to really integrate that, and we'll talk a little bit about 360 here in a bit. Talking a little bit about SRT, I'm not going to get too technical, but the idea is that one of the number one problem, if we go back to like 5 or 10 years in the streaming industry, people were trying to solve how to get content to end users. That was the biggest problem in the workflow, is how do you reliably get content to end users? With HLS and HTTP live streaming protocols, they kind of solved that with adaptive bitrate, right? And Wowza is right at the heart of enabling adaptive bitrate delivery. So that was kind of solved, but then the biggest problem is upload bandwidth and reliable contribution into a streaming network, and especially from live events. I think with the GoCoder app that MEDIAL has developed on for iOS and Android, you could have students who are working on a collaborative project using their iPhones to go across campus. But what if a part of that campus has an unreliable Wi-Fi connection, or they're using their 4G or 3G mobile streaming into it, and there's a break in their coverage, whatever cell tower they happen to be on. Those are all very, very common issues, and not just for a mobile workflow, but also for true, reliable encoders. These OVB trucks that are out in the field at Wembley Stadium, and all of a sudden, the network gets saturated and they can't get a stream out. You need to find a way to more intelligently handle packet loss across those IP networks. And if you're trying to push 10 megabits of data, and all of a sudden, all you have in that pipe is 5 megabits, what's going to happen to the other 5 megabits of data? It's going to get lost. You can't alleviate that unless you buy more upload bandwidth, but the way that you handle that packet loss is what's so critical and what our SRT is aiming to solve. Not only does it improve the way that you handle that data or packet loss, it also creates less latency because of the way that it actually transfers packets across a network. So that's what SRT really does. And I'll show a demo here in just a little bit that really, I think, says it all, more than I can say in so many words. The amazing thing about this is Haivision is an encoder vendor. So they make contribution or encoders and decoders in the industry, a great product. So similar to a Matrox Monarch or a software encoder or a Pearl or something like that. They created SRT to build into their products, but then they realized they weren't getting wide adoption. So Dave, our CEO, kind of Jedi mind tricked them into open sourcing this SRT, which has been a brilliant idea because now we have an SRT alliance that we launched at NAB in April, and we have, I think it's 80 members just in the last 6 months. It's the fastest growing open source technology in the video world ever. So it's a really, really powerful piece of our product that we can then build into MEDIAL and build into products to really help with your streaming workflow. And just as an example, these are just some of the members. So I'm not talking about, people in the industry who really have no influence. These are major influencers in the industry. People like Teradek from the encoder side. Matrox is part of this network. From the CDN side, Limelight Networks, Brightcove, like these OVPs, all these different people that are in here. And we're very proud that Wowza with Haivision were the founding members of this alliance. So we're really, really at the heart of this open source initiative with SRT, and it's going to continue to evolve. And it is already available in the Wowza Streaming Engine product as a contribution protocol. So once again, let's look at a very quick video, and I'll show you guys exactly what's going on with this. So in the bottom left corner here, we have the live source. This is what's coming off of your camera, your SDI feed. Just beautiful, pristine. It's not over IP yet. What happens up here in the top left corner, this is what happens with just 2% packet loss without doing anything, just over MPEG transport stream over the UDP protocol. So this is a 4 megabit per second video, 1080p, encoded to H.264. This is using a Makito X encoder. And you can see just 2% of the data that's not getting across, and you see this blockiness. And these are probably things that you've seen yourselves when watching all kinds of content online, right? And it kind of goes back to thinking back in the 90s when you were watching videos in a window this big, right? And the packet loss that you would see and the poor pixelation and quality. But what's happening over here on the right, these are the two streams that are coming out using SRT. It's the exact same amount of packet loss. Like I mentioned, we're not alleviating the packet loss. It's going to happen if the network doesn't have enough bandwidth. But what we're doing is we're intelligently handling which packets are being lost. And the algorithms inside of this protocol are deciding what's not important. This is the least important amount of this so that it's almost imperceptible to the end user. So the great thing about SRT, it's free. It's in the product. You can buy encoders now like Teradek, Haivision, Matrox. I know Epiphan is looking to get on this, Newtek as well. So all these different encoder vendors that you probably already own are going to be implementing SRT. And the great thing too, over here on the right, you'll see one is H.264 and one is HEVC H.265. So this is agnostic to the actual codec that sits inside it. This is a network protocol that sits above that. So really excited about this, and it's really going to help with latency issues. It's going to help with packet loss issues and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about something kind of more fun and sexy, because that was all very techy and very boring. So VR and 360, and this is a place that Wowza's been playing in for quite a while. So we were lucky enough with our software that we really didn't have to do anything to make this work. So it really just comes down to handling more data and having more resolution available inside of a stream. And hopefully we'll be able to kind of show off a little demo here, but if that doesn't work for any reason, we have a ton of demos that I've actually done most of our VR 360 stuff at Wowza available on our YouTube site that we can share after in a follow-up email. But the idea here is with VR and 360 is first of all, you got to answer this, like why? Is it just technology for technology's sake? Or is there really a use case for this? So I have this little video, and there was a great voiceover, but we don't have audio playback. So I'll just kind of talk through some of this. And this is one of our customers in the United States, Radiant Images. And they really are at the forefront of VR and 360 production, both for video on demand as well as for live. And they are working with some very, very large names. I think this was one that they did for Ford. This is one they did for a swimming brand. But their idea is they're trying to find new ways for users to engage with their content. And when you look through these, you're probably thinking, well, these are very kind of marketing videos for brands. But your university in the end is a brand, right? And I don't know where MEDIAL sits within your university ecosystem. I think it's used at every university a little bit differently. But a lot of times you are trying to sell a brand, and you're trying to not just sell a brand, but also create new content and new ways of engaging your students. and engaging your professors and engaging, and you know, the whole idea that you're using video is to help the educational process, and with 360 it can do that. One of my favorite use cases with VR and 360 is Duke University in America, and their medical university is doing live 360 streaming of surgeries. So they're doing this because they realized they were focusing on one part of a surgery with an overhead camera, and people who were in there weren't getting the full experience of, you know, something off shot happened, like a particular tool was grabbed, or the doctor did something. You know, in this educational environment, they're realizing that they're missing a lot of really important data and learning experiences. So this VR 360 camera they put in allows the student to control the playback and focus on a part of the surgery that they really want to look at. So that's kind of just an idea of one of the use cases that does this. One of the amazing ones, I'll kind of skip ahead through this. This is kind of a concert, a live concert. This is a live music TV, MTV awards event where they wanted to create kind of an engaging workflow inside of the stadium so that people were engaging with this music awards show felt like they were in the stadium, right? And with a lot of this, it's actually kind of like a second screen experience. Maybe they'll be watching a live feed in one place, but be consuming it on their mobile device to control the 360 experience separately. One I want to bring up in this video, I'll just kind of skip ahead here and show you, is there's one that they did with Obama's, I think it was his farewell inauguration or whatever they call that, his farewell event. And they wanted to produce one that people could watch all over the world. So this is one, I think it's very typical of what maybe something you do in a university lecture of some kind, is if you have a very, very prominent speaker, is how can you create a piece of content where you feel like you're there and you can kind of engage in that. You can also use multi-audio surround sound to actually pull in, you know, 7-point audio or 5-point audio surround and make someone feel like they're there. So all those pieces can be done. This one was really good one. Of course, this is a very American-focused PR event for the Super Bowl. So this is a military-based, I think, in Afghanistan, and they wanted to find a way that some of these soldiers who were watching the NFL or the Super Bowl could engage with family members who were in the stadium, and they surprised them, and they created a VR environment where this person could be in the stadium with their family, even though they were from a different location. So kind of a heartwarming, and it's a really great video. I recommend you go to Radiant Images and just look at what they're doing, because it's some really, really cool stuff from a lot of different perspectives. So this is kind of, and so these soldiers got completely surprised by this whole experience. I'll skip ahead a little bit so I can kind of show you. So you can see here, this is one of the soldiers, and she hasn't seen her family in like, 9 months or a year. And they're sitting inside the stadium and actually being able to engage and interact with their families. So really kind of cool, heartwarming stories, right, that you can tell with VR and 360. And this can be implemented right now with the technology you guys already have with Wowza and with MEDIAL. Plug in a camera, be able to connect that and be able to tell that story and help really make your university more engaging, right? So let me go ahead and skip through and let's get our hands a little bit dirtier and talk about the actual technology that's happening here. And keep me honest here, Rob. Tell me exactly how much time I have as well.
I think we're fine. I think we've maybe got like 20 minutes, something like that. I was just going to say on the 360 side, we can show a VOD version of the dry run that we did here, because we do have that on YouTube. So we can show that, and I can bring up the link on there when you're ready to show it.
Perfect, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So let me kind of talk through the workflow. How many here, of show of hands, have actually done VR 360 or played with it in some way? All right, so we've got, probably a quarter, a third of the audience who's actually played with it in some respect. So some of this may be repetitive to you guys, but these slides specifically, and I did a presentation with Gordon Charles from UCL at BVE Streaming Media Forum earlier this year in February, where we kind of talked through the workflow and also the evolution of the technology. I think there's some really interesting things happening as our mobile phones become more and more powerful. People are building in VR 360 into a mobile phone workflow, which I think in the next 6 months to a year, you're going to see devices on the market that do it natively in the device. You build in an encoder like GoCoder, which is what they're built on. You could do 360 streaming from your mobile device, which is kind of cool, right? The fact that you could do that from a mobile device. So in a typical workflow for VR and 360, over here on the left, we've got the cameras in the rig. And this is what's truly evolving, is the cameras in the rig and the video stitching are now, in the past, they've been very clumsy rigs and very clumsy ways of actually capturing this. Now those are becoming one device, and they're becoming a lot more elegant and sleek. So what really the essence, though, is you need cameras that can create and capture a circular environment or some kind of a 360 environment. And then you need to stitch all of those together, whether it be 4 cameras or 8 cameras or 16 cameras. Stitch those all into a large 2D resolution, 4K resolution, 8K resolution, whatever, very high quality feed that then you can send to a user so they can play that back in some kind of a device. Most of the technology that does the stitching can push out that stream over RTMP, which I think you guys know is the most traditional, conventional, low latency streaming protocol. And then in the middle here is where you can use Wowza technology, whether it be Wowza streaming engine on premises that you use already, or whether it be our cloud service that's already enabled to do 360 streaming. And then once you do that, we process that, we can transcode that, we can change the protocol to HLS or playback protocols that can get to different devices. Then you need a way to play back on those devices. In browser, through an HTML5 player, JW Player has a 361 that I know Rob and his team have been playing with their beta version of that. And then you also need a mobile SDK that you can actually play that back on a mobile device, even build it into your app. So iOS devices, Android devices, Windows devices, different devices can actually play back that content and consume the content and live there. And then the VR headset workflow as well, where you can deliver it to a VR headset and people can actually use that for playback. So this is one of the devices that we've seen that plugs into. You can see it's a separate device that can plug into an iPhone or an Android device. This Insta360 Nano. There's Gyroptic makes one as well. Insta360 has made another one called the Insta360 One, which is an even more high quality device. But the idea is you plug it in, you open the app, you can stream directly to Facebook, YouTube, or to an RTMP server, to a Wowza server, send it to us, and then we can restream it and send it to multiple platforms. So these are kind of some of the older school rigs that people have done using GoPros or different devices. So in this idea, this is 4 GoPros. Here you can imagine, I'm sure your universities have the budget for this, right? I mean, it's only about, I don't know, $250,000 for this rig. But the idea is this is something you could do for a very, very high-end film production. Some of our large broadcasters are actually doing original 360 content to promote a feature film or a feature TV show. So someone like like in Spain, Antena 3, which is a very large broadcaster in Spain, they've put a lot of money into developing a show, but they want to create engagement on social media. So they'll create a 360 event, film it in very high quality, make it available as a webisode or some kind of a mini episode to then push people to their OTT platform so people can consume the content. So yeah, if you've got budget for that. This one too, the GoPro rigs, 16 here. The problem with these rigs that I just showed here is that all of these require you to capture them into IP and then stitch them together as well. So think about all the cabling that you need to do. Just plugging in one GoPro is a pain in the ass enough, but imagine 16 of them, plugging them all at the same time, capturing them, having a separate machine that does all the stitching, and then restreaming it and coding it. It's a bit of a pain. And you need these kind of HDMI capture devices to do that, whether it be a Magewell device, which is a great device, or their actual capture card. Think of it, you'd need 16 of these Magewell capture devices and a machine big enough and strong enough to plug them all in and do it. It's a bit of a pain. So what we've seen in the evolution of the market is, the stitching, the actual device themselves have all been built into one device. And this is just a screenshot of the Video Stitch device, of our HANA software, I should say. Just an example of, this is VOD content, 6 different feeds. You can synchronize it, you can stitch it, you can choose the stitching lines. It's a pretty fun technology to work with. So talked about the pain points, the hardware setup, the overheating that you can with all these different cameras. So what we've really seen is this Aura device, which is what we're using today, is trying to solve the need or the pain points that people have seen. So Video Stitch made the Vahana software, which is one of the industry leaders and first to the market. And they built this camera that's a 4K quality camera, has 4 different cameras, allows you to stitch that all together using this separate stitching box. So even this device is a little bit clumsy because it's not all on one nice camera that's portable. It has a different stitching box. The reality, though, is that cameras, the real estate of a camera is just not enough currently to do a very, very high quality feed. Gyroptic, which is one that's out there, is a small device that does it, but it does it at a much smaller, much lower resolution. So this is one. It's really great. If you've ever used this, the quality of it is just lacking. But it was the first kind of standalone device that did it all. It did the capture, it did the stitching, did the streaming. It was very elegant in that respect. And then, of course, we get into higher budget items. These Ozos have been very popular. UEFA has done it for the Champions League final and semi-final, trying to create more user engagement into these different events. And then Teradek, who I mentioned previously, they have this really nice device that, the nice thing about this one, it is kind of a standalone hardware device. You pull up an iPad, use the stitching software on the iPad Pro on their app, but this allows you to pull in whatever camera you have. So this could be existing cameras that you already own. You can just plug it in through an HDMI port on here, and it allows you to stitch 4 cameras together using their software as well, and then push it into Wowza or into MEDIAL. But this is really, I think, what's the most exciting, and what it makes 360 more accessible, is these kind of mobile devices. So Insta360 Nano, Gyroptic I/O. Truthfully, this isn't the best device. I'm hoping they're coming out with a newer version. And then Insta360 has come out with their One, which I haven't tried yet, but I've heard is very even higher quality. But this allows you to actually use an encoder on your mobile phone to do it. I know with our GoCoder SDK, our mobile SDK that is used by MEDIAL, we are working with some of these vendors to actually pull in 360 into that encoder app and stream. So as soon as you have a separate device, and then I really do think in the next year we're going to have mobile devices that do this natively, which allows you to just pull out your new iPhone 9 or Samsung Galaxy S9 or whatever. You have both. You already have 2 cameras on it. 180-degree fisheye lenses on each. You stitch it on the device. You use Wowza's GoCoder SDK to encode it, send into the platform. I could really see this being on our roadmap for GoCoder. So we've talked about capture. We've talked about scaling a little bit with Wowza, which we do pretty natively and pretty easily with both our cloud and engine products. But then you need to play it back, and there's a few different ways to do that. The great thing about the partnership that Rob and MEDIAL has with JW Player is that JW Player has a 360 playback, HTML5, as well as through their SDK, that you can build it into an app to actually have your own custom branded app. Build in the JW Player SDK and play that back on mobile devices. So that's possible. But we also work with other vendors. We've got these guys, NextPlayer, that have a really nice, elegant 360 SDK as well. And they also have an HTML5 version. We've got JW Player as well. And this is true for building your own VR headset apps. If you guys are doing some kind of immersive, future-looking technologies, you can build your own workflows to do that. But there's a lot of different options for playback. And a lot of other kind of HTML5 browsers as well. So this is kind of the workflow that we're going to show in the demo here. So you want to go ahead and show this, Rob? Hopefully we can make this work. But really the idea, if for some reason for the network here we're not able to pull it up.
I'm going to preface this by saying I don't think it's going to work right now, but we will get it working a bit later. So me and Dave are going to work on it. Is my audio still good, John? Yeah? Okay. Because I'm off of your lapel mic now. Or I might be off of something here. So we've been here to do a dry run the other day, and this worked really well. I think there's some sort of issue with a port changed onto another VLAN or something, so we couldn't get that working. But we'll get it working over lunch, and we'll show this. I've emailed the link to myself. Where are we? It should have come through. Is that my email? No.
But I mean, I guess long story short is you can go to Wowza's YouTube page right now. We've got 2 demos on there. If you just search 360 or VR, one that I just did, I think 3 weeks ago, before I sent the Aura device here, showing this entire workflow with Wowza Streaming Cloud and how it works. So you literally can get it set up in a matter of minutes. And then I did one about 2 years ago that shows how to do this with Wowza Streaming Engine with a gyroptic camera. But really, that workflow would allow you to get set up with both workflows in just a matter of minutes with a 360 device. And then the other thing I'll just mention real quick, just because I know we're short on time, Rob had mentioned kind of the roadmap for GoCoder SDK. So one of the huge things that Wowza is investing in is low latency. So latency is a huge issue. I don't know how big it is for you guys, but I know we have some of our EDU customers around the world that are doing more with virtual campuses. So they're doing different remote locations or even student engagement from their homes or from traveling or other remote campuses. And using Wowza, or using, not Wowza's fault, but using streaming protocols nowadays, there's not really a good alternative for RTMP and flash playback to have low latency workflows. Wowza still supports RTMP, and of course MEDIAL does as well. But the biggest problem is the fact that flash playback is restricted now on many networks and many browsers. So you need a workaround for that. So this is a place that Wowza's been playing in for a couple of years. So we do have our own ultra-low latency streaming platform that's built into our cloud solution. And we've really created some unique technologies inside of Wowza that enable this. One of the things we've done is we're going to build this into the GoCoder SDK. The idea is that you can build your own FaceTime app, your own WhatsApp video app, your own Skype app with this SDK that you can literally collaborate from two mobile devices, not just from encoding and streaming, but also playback on that device. And all of that in our testing, it's been in under a second, globally scaled. So if you're interested in ultra-low latency, we can talk about that. The problem with that workflow is that it goes back to a traditional workflow of streaming where you had a stateful protocol with a media server, like RTMP, where you have to connect to a media server to do that. With Apple HLS and other HTTP streaming protocols, they're stateless files. They're just little chunks of HTTP files that people can access. That's the way that the modern internet is designed, is for HTTP streaming. Big CDNs like Akamai and Limelight and even your networks are optimized for HTTP. The problem is they have latency built into them. With HLS, conventionally, it can be anywhere from 15 to 30 to 60 seconds. If you really optimize it, you can get 6 seconds with HLS. And that's in a very best world scenario. That's not a good workflow for many people. One of the things that's in our roadmap is to build in, separate from our ultra-low latency stateful protocol, is to build in CMAF. If you've heard of CMAF, the idea is that with HLS files, we're creating little chunks, right, of files. Usually they're 2-second chunks. You need to download 3 chunks before it plays back on a client device, so that's 6 seconds of latency. Well, what CMAF allows you to do is instead of, you still download those 3 chunks, but it allows you to start downloading chunks of chunks, so little micro chunks, and play back even quicker. So that's a technology that a lot of people are trying to use to still take advantage of HLS and HTTP streaming, but solve the issue of low latency and reduced latency inside of HLS. So that's something that you should see in our product in 2018, and hopefully we can build in. And we're working with JW Player on that as well to make sure they have CMAF support inside the player. So that's hopefully something you'll see quite soon. And then while we're still getting this up and running, I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So I know I went over a lot, and there's a ton that I left out. But if you've got any questions, I'm here.
So I think we've got floor mics. So Dave's got the blue mic. John? So if anyone wants to ask a question, bail me out while I'm trying to get this working. You can even email the link to each other.
Thank you. Yeah, just regarding the footage you showed of the service personnel, the American service personnel going to the Super Bowl. Obviously, to interact with the families, you're talking about exceptionally low latency. How did you manage that?
So how did they achieve that? So, I mean, they used a Wowza server to, of course, capture the feed locally and stream it. You can do that for that playback. I don't specifically know. I would assume they probably did that with tuned RTMP. So the playback device they had was a flash player, most likely, and that's the way they played it back. Or they even maybe played it back with VLC. They just pulled it in with a VLC. With kind of a point-to-point like that, it's easy because you can just pull up VLC or you can pull up something. But if you're trying to do native delivery to HTML5 players, that's where the issue comes in with low latency. Potentially, they could have actually used the Wowza protocol as well.
I knew you'd regret doing that, Ollie.
But there is an inherent latency with pulling in the stream off a Aura camera or any other camera. It's got to capture, stitch. It's got to encode it to IP, so RTMP, send it to Wowza. Wowza, if it just restreams it, then Wowza's not adding very much latency at all. You're talking about milliseconds of latency. But then you've got to propagate it across the internet and get it somewhere. If you do a kind of especially if you get it into Wowza Streaming Cloud, then you can get it into we use Akamai as the CDN inside of Wowza Streaming Cloud. Once you get it in their network, it's an incredibly fast network to get it around the world. From that perspective, that's, once again, probably under a second of latency. But the reality is in that workflow, I could imagine they probably had 3 to 5 seconds of latency with that. So, but for many use cases, that's too much. So that's the reason we're developing this separate ultra-low latency streaming platform.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. I don't know if you heard about the GoCoder roadmap. I think you were busy with.
No, sorry, I was busy messing around there. So yeah, I mean, so just to just to go through this, so this week came the other day, and we set up Ryan's Aura camera. We'll get this set up as a live feed, and we kind of put it over this side of the room, and this was a kind of half an hour test that we did of it, so I'm kind of moving this around now. And this was good from the point of view of, I think this was a bit of an eye-opener in terms of you've got to get the light right, because this here, you can't actually see what's going on with this. But we were kind of discussing this as like, how useful would this be to a student experience? I mean, you were talking about kind of promotional stuff, where you could almost say, well, you're thinking of attending this university, why don't you sit in on one of the lectures? Let's do it. I think you'd have to get the audio right. I'm not sure with the Aura, this is something we were doing when we were doing the test. Can you take the line in? Is it got?
Yeah, it's got a separate line in that you can take. Yeah. So, the idea there is, imagine you do an entire virtual tour. I know UCL specifically, I know you've got users all over the world, and you want to attract users to have a very diverse, London's already very diverse, but to attract diverse people from all parts of the world makes your university even more diverse. And I know that's a big aspect. Imagine in this scenario, you've got multiple Auras. I mean, imagine you've got the budget. I know you guys have unlimited budget to buy these red cameras, so you can buy a few Auras. But imagine that you have literally all virtual people here, and maybe they're all using the same camera, but they're talking to each other. And in the app, you're using Facebook Live or YouTube Live for people to kind of collaborate with each other and talk to each other who are all prospectively looking at going to your university. I mean, you guys are the creative ones. You guys are the content creators. So, but the things that we're seeing, and it kind of opens your mind up, it's possible with these workflows from a technology perspective. From the GoCoder side, I'll mention that GoCoder can already do, if your device can do it, it can do 4K encoding on the device. So iOS, I think 6S and above, and then Samsung S6 and above as well, can do 4K capture, and Wowza can grab that. So we already have kind of the pieces in there to do VR in 360. It's just the camera piece that we're still working on, a vendor that actually comes out with a camera that allows you to stitch both the camera feeds in and do it. But I think that would be quite exciting. One of the other things I'll mention that I saw in the presentation earlier that Rob gave is encoder support. So I know he had mentioned Telestream Wirecast, very popular, a great product, a partner of ours as well as NewTek. We also work very nicely with Matrox Monarch devices. So they've got the LCS, which is a beautiful device. Epiphan has a wonderful picture-in-picture device like the Pearl that we work with as well, integrated into Wowza. And it doesn't matter even if you use any of these supported ones. Any RTMP streamer, whether it be something like open broadcast software, which is free, or whether it's a hardware encoder, an Extron encoder, something legacy that you have, Wowza pretty much supports anything on the ingest side. So we're very robust in that way. So just because you saw those logos up there doesn't mean we don't support a range of other encoders from a live side. All right, any other questions?
Any other questions from the floor? Everyone wants to have their tea and coffee. Okay, so I think we're probably bang on time. I think we're gonna break, have some tea and coffee, and then we'll be back shortly. So we're going to go to an intermission on our live.